So I'm super freaking pissed, right? My audio got effed up on this. I lost over 2 days worth of video. So, crowdfunding freaking roundup. Already done it once. Should be easier to do the second time around, right? You already know what you're talking about, Chris. You don't have to spitball everything like you do all the time. However, spoilers right here. All of a sudden, tucked in to 2 of the crowdfunding projects this week. Snuck in there. I didn't see any news about this. I didn't see any announcements. I'm sure it's been out there somewhere. But my first recollection, my first crossing of it, Kickstarter stretch pay. You ready? Yeah, we're going to hit on that too this week. Let's go. First up, Fateforge, Chronicles of Kaan, new expansion, second printing, $165,000, right? This is one of the 2 that has the little Kickstarter stretch pay. So, we'll get down to that in a second. Story-driven, action-packed, co-op adventure board game with an app-heavily driven use of managing the 3-phase system that they've got going on here. The story overworld phase, the minutia, the dive-in combat phase, and then the rest go to your home, upgrade all your equipment, in between phase of things like we see in a lot of games of a dungeon crawl aspect now. So a lot of people love this from 2024, but because it is app-driven, that's going to be the most divisive element of this. Now, we'll talk about everything else in a second, but I want to talk about the project pledge over time down here. 4 equal payments. Pay when the campaign ends, then pay subsequently 3 more times, separated by 2 weeks each time. But, however, I don't think stretch pay on Gamefound does this, as you need at least to be buying $125 worth of crap. Because that's, not insignificant. And yeah, right? That's what happens. And you can ask them if there's any other details you need to know. Sort of like how I talked about in the unpopular board game opinions video from earlier this week, of questioning if Gamefound is actually getting their transaction fee on stretch pays, just like they are when they do campaign as well as pledge manager. So I would wonder similar here. But again, what you're doing here with Kin of the Wild is you're getting little creatures, because the combat system is based on a dice rolling action allocation system where you roll 4 dice and use the symbols on that dice to take the actions in the combat, moving, exploring, gathering loot, and battling as the main aspect, right? That's what you're doing in the combat, is you're battling. And so your creature here, as you find them and acquire them, whatever you may do in that sense, gives you an extra 5th die, I believe, in most cases. And they are different than your regular characters because they actually don't have health. They have points that are scared off points. So if they take 9 damage or they take 1 damage, each time you lose a scared off point. And if they lose all those points, then they run away from you, right? Free companion app, actions, choices, decisions, manages the bookkeeping. A lot of that combat-based situation, as well as the quests, are going to have things you need to accomplish, especially even in the combat section of things. And if you're looking at the combat section of things, for example, it's not just going to be kill, kill, kill. It's going to be like, okay, maybe get from here to there, exit over here. And you're going to have to a certain number of rounds to accomplish that. And if you don't, then you have to enter in which ones you were able to accomplish, because it does allow you to fall forward so that you don't just fail completely and, fail and not have fun with it and go backwards. And I think the designer actually says somewhere on this page that they designed it as like I want to be able to play this in like a setup, teardown, and session scenario in like an hour. And so if that appeals to you with everything else that's got going on here, you can do that. The other previous expansion, Clash of Immortals, gives you another character that you can play with, more mounted enemies, and more maneuvers that allow you to combo-licious. All of the bigger and smarter people than me have videos out on this, and you can check out all the content that comes with the bling and the free boss miniature set here only if you're buying the base game. If you don't buy the base game and you just get the new expansion, this isn't actually included. So you can buy it separately if you want, but that's going to be the reason you might get it now if you want some of those miniatures and the deluxeifications that go along with all of these sorts of things that are available to you. So when is this one going to be due? Or due. It's like a homework assignment. Oh, before the end of the year, they say. So we'll see. Mostly a reprint. And truth be told, right, the Kin of the Wild expansion is relatively small, all considered. So it's like a 2-page rulebook. Like, I'm not kidding about what it's adding. So take that for what you will, but that's $165,000 going on. StarDriven Gateway, though, is up next. It's got $126,000. And I'm going to get punched at and I'm going to be, thrown under the bus with this one, but I am still somewhat of a mildly firm believer that there is a Kickstarter versus Gamefound effect. This one tried to fund over on Gamefound last year. Now, they did some slight tweaking. The higher pledge level for this one, and we'll talk about the mechanics in a second, but the higher pledge level for this one, they didn't have a gameplay all in, but let's skip to this one, the Solar Flare Pledge Deluxe Edition was $149, it's $129. Is that enough to get that much more money? Because they funded last time, they $77,000 of a $50,000 funding goal, which again, if you go back up top and you look here though, they only have a $15,000 funding goal right now. So did it really need to be 50 or is 15 a little bit low? Either way, they're already over 150% of their previous funding that they got during the previous campaign. And so how do you attribute that, right? This is not that much different. So is it just, people see it and really like it this time more around? Or is it truly Kickstarter just has more of that effect for these campaigns? Again, if it's not the Kickstarter effect, I guess I would say, and I'm not saying it has to be, I guess I would put the question back on people and saying, what is it then that causes this to go from $77,000 installing to $126,000 in the first 48 hours? Right? Okay, StarDriven Gateway though. What you're doing is sort of an FTL-based board game mixed with ISS Vanguard. You have your factions, you have your asymmetric powers and crew decks that you're going to be upgrading. As you place these crew cards into the 6 or so places on your ship that are going to allow you to manage, navigate, upgrade, and do every ship action that you would want. And you're going to be not able to just do that by placing the crew there, but you're going to have to then allocate a dice there, or die or dice, depending on how many times you want to play that certain action. And that will allow you to activate it at a certain strength. And that's what these boxes are on the right side. Now you're going to have some asymmetric aspects to this as well, and all of the different explorative and crew cards that are going to be part of this in addition. This is also a scenario-based situation, not only about 8 scenarios in the base game, but then also the cooperative expansion is going to offer different ways of playing, and all of these are going to change essentially the dynamics in which you are maneuvering, as well as how you're actually scoring the victory points. Some of these will be, hey, score based on knocking out other people, score based on exploring, score based on some of that aspect. And so that's what this is going to be offering in a, scenario-based system like I mentioned. The 3 actions that I talked about, the crew, the activation with the dice, or resting to get your dice back, the free actions as you're upgrading, recruiting, or promoting, and the rulebook is on the page, as well as a solo mode, the cooperative expansion, which talks about the different menacing things you're going to be dealing with, including raiding outposts and stopping the terror, stopping the invasion, and dismantling drills. So you want a little deluxification with blinged out ships, you can do that in addition. A bunch of stretch goals, and yeah, right? So there you go. That is StarDriven Gateway, and doing a lot better, but you can tell me why, because I'm always wrong. Terminus Frontier, cooperative tactical adventure board game. Speaking of the 6 digits, we got another 6-digit here. And you know what? This is going to be a Mass Effect of board games, if you will. And the main reason is because, it's spacefaring skirmish battle, right? And it's going to have some stealth. It's going to have some action. It's going to have some exploration. It's going to have a little bit of everything. It's going to have some in-between where you're exploring the stars and upgrading and trying to do all these fun things. But it really is more of a skirmish-based miniature game as a whole, mixed with an Aeon and Trespass Odyssey sort of vibe, going back and forth between the big world and the combat system-ish, if you like that. And the 2 most unique things on here need to be pointed out, because the question is, okay, when you're looking at this 50-page rulebook, how do I discern whether or not this style of skirmish, dungeon crawl, Mass Effect-ish, whatever combined adjectives there, game is for me? And the first one that you need to know is the initiative-based track that they've got going on in a GIF down here that you can see, is because you get to choose of your 4 characters that are going to be in a group, which one goes in which initiative order, and you place in the odds, like 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And then your enemies get placed in 2, 4, 6, and 8, for example. And each of those spots is going to have different upgrades, downgrades, abilities, things like that that are going to be beneficial but also detrimental, because the higher you go in the initiative order, the more of a threat you are going to present yourself as to the enemy. And then the lower you go in the order, the less action points you may have to do said actions in the first place, with a card-driven dynamic system that you're going to be utilizing as you go along in order to combat on these grid-based, hex-based maps in the first place. The gear, the loot, all of that stuff, the open world space exploration in between, the crawl, skirmish style areas as well, style, and the asymmetry of your different characters, allowing them to also choose different paths and ally with different factions as you go through the narrative side of things. It has boss battles, it has stealth scenarios, it has hundreds of hours of gameplay as a Gloomhaven killer. That's not my words, that's words we just passed on the page. So those are the aspects that you're getting to know. The other unique thing with this formation-based system that they say here, and that's the AI card that he flipped over there in the illustration, so you can see how the AI is going to respond, and most of the time that threat is important because the higher the threat, the priority the target, if you will, spending your action points with the cards. And this is the other unique thing, is you have an action ammo deck, because your gun has 3 different modes that it can fire in depending on how many shots you want to fire, and that's how many cards you're going to be drawing, because you'll have cards that are hits like this, but you'll also have cards that are just frank misses. And so do you deplete your ammo deck and then have to reload, because reloading is your full action on a turn potentially, and then have bad guys go rinse and repeat until you achieve your objectives? And AI is not only going to attack, it's also going to go behind cover. And that'd be my biggest question in this situation, is how minutia, how upkeep, how unintuitive is the AI system, how streamlined is it? And that might be the make it or break it. And I guess the other thing, when you start to see some of this other stuff around here, right, is that you've got the explorative, you've got the narrative, you've got the skill check. How much of that do you want? Or do you just want a pure skirmish scenario-based system? And maybe Earth Flashpoint Under Siege is maybe more of your vibe if you don't want as much of this. But, I mean, you can kind of mix match and see which one is right for you now, especially because they're both going head-to-head live. So the only issue then you have to worry about is that it's going to cost you $125 shipped, and it's going to be $225 if you want to get miniatures on top of that. So otherwise, give a look-see, 50-page rulebook on the page as well, and you can try it, I believe, on one of the simulators. I believe it's Board Game Arena, maybe? Nah, it's Tabletop Simulator. So give it a look-see, $106,000. Then, Siberian Manhunt, I owe them a mea culpa, because they reached out to me and they said, hey, do you want to talk about this? And I said, yes. And then I am horrible at emailing, and I suck at life sometimes in that regard, and so I didn't get back to them in time. But this is a 1 versus 1 asymmetric hidden movement style game where you're a pilot behind Russian enemy lines in like World War II, and you're trying to make it home. And you're going to be using an action card-based system with energy in order to maneuver slowly through these areas, avoid events, avoid civilians turning you in, and taking your asymmetric options as you're trying to sneak through, and the government KGB agents are on the other side trying to find you, capture you, or kill you with their asymmetric actions in the first place, trying to get all of those people to turn you in on their side of things. So, yeah, it's 45 euros right now. It's a little bit more expensive, but it gives me a little bit of a Twilight Struggle-esque vibe mixed with like a Beast Shattered Isles, if you will, with the hidden movement, because that's going to be a main aspect of the pilot as they're moving along here. And you can kind of see a little bit of what I just ran through of you're going to be searching, you're going to be foraging, you're going to be crafting, and making the stuff that you need to survive and get away from the government and their evil KGB assets in the first place. So there you go, Tabletop Simulator, a bunch of smarter people again talking about it than me, and give it a look-see, because again, the couple indie games here that wouldn't be made and wouldn't be picking up elsewhere. So that is Siberian Manhunt. Then Blood on the Sands. This is gladiator-based combat, but it's skirmish style, and you're gonna be using dice, and you're gonna have cards, and you maybe can campaign it together and link them together and get scars and trophies and upgrades as you go along. But if you really want to know anything about how it plays, you're gonna have to watch this how to play video, because that's the only thing that's there right now. There's no rulebook. There's no differencing of the mechanics. It's just a lot of very generic terminology to describe vaguely what you're doing in a immersive, tactically based combat game that is for fallen warriors and dealing with gladiators, and pledge levels for $100 essentially for the 2-player core, or $200 for a little bit of extra. So again, like, it's fine. I think it's doing something slightly unique in the historical aspect. So, I mean, I can see the appeal aesthetically, but I want to see a little bit more gameplay. I want to see a little bit more what makes this one that much different. And why would I get this over all the other skirmish, you know, this style head-to-head to dueling games in the first place? But there you go, Blood on Sands. Then, Bark Avenue's back with 2 new expansions, Kings and Queens and Concrete Jungle. This is sort of a worker placement vibe where you are walking dogs, picking them up, taking actions as you're walking them a certain distance, and then dropping them off in their neighborhoods to begin with in order to earn money and victory points for the end game. whoever can do the most over the events of a day, because as you start a new round, the sun marker moves, you draw new events that are going to change the dynamics of those things in the first place, and then you're rolling a die before you move and then take your actions on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis. The 2 new expansions here, Kings and Queens, are offering some asymmetry to go along with your unique dog walkers. Also, on top of the asymmetry, it's going to be allowing you to have 2 dog cards, 2 dogs on a single card to take up slots. It's going to have a new map borough that you're going to be traveling through, because as these neighborhoods are being passed through, if you stop on them, they're going to have unique neighborhood actions that you can utilize in a worker placement style. And then the concrete jungle is going to be offering a little bit more of non-cats and dogs in terms of gameplay content and the animals that you can be walking and earning money for. And then you get reviewed depending on how you move them and how far you walk them and what you pick up along the way that they might like or not like, and all of those aspects, the treats there, that sort of thing. And so if you really want to spend $240, well, you're too late if you have a cat or a dog or a mammal, potentially. But if you have a lizard or a bird, you can spend $240 to get a simile or facsimile or whatever that's called, a picture that semi-resembles your pet into the game as a promo, which just reminds me, I need to find a company that loves me enough to be able to be willing to put me in a game that would be a game that I love. I don't think I have any companies that love me that much, though, so just kidding. But that's what you're getting, and if you want to spend $90 on this plus expansions, you can. And the new stuff alone with the upgrade pack is $35, or just one of the expansions here is $22. Again, plenty of reviews because this is already previously crowdfunded, and you'll have it maybe later this year in addition. Maybe. So we'll see. But that is Bark Avenue. It's back barking with 2 new expansions. Then, did you ever want to play tabletop pinball mixed with Klash as a 4-player situation and electronically want to spend almost $400 to get a prototype that, you kind of wonder if it's going to last or if it's going to work? Well, you can with this. It's called Funpop. You just kind of go. That shoots marbles out of each one of these corners, and you do sort of a reverse hungry hippos using your little blocker to prevent it from getting past you in like a sort of Pong style, if you will. And then if you run out of your lives and you've had too many go past you, then your wall goes up on your side, you're out, and then that wall bounces off stuff back to the people who are remaining, and you go until whoever wins. And you have a little remote that you're using to move it back and forth and left and right. So again, they say they're almost literally ready to hit the print button, but if you want to get it, it's going to be $350 for this thing. And I just go, holy cow, electronics on crowdfunding. I think it's a big hit or miss, but this is tabletop pinball with Klash, and it's got 40 people doing it right now. So we'll see. Hopefully it comes at retail and we can get it later on. Somebody does it that way and we get a guarantee. So if you want to get in on first, though, you can do it right here. Then, Personal Vendetta, $4,000 as a TCG style. Your clones doing a TCG health battle, mental health, physical health, and attributing them and trying to take them out, essentially, from a central market tableau as you gather your cards, activate them, and spend them in order to knock out your opponent, right? There's a rules page. Actually, if you go to the rules website, it's actually really, really well laid out. But it's also one of those games where they've used a lot of terminology that they want to make it seem like it's their terminology, but for common stuff that you're seeing in TCGs and mechanics with these types of games as a whole. So give it a look-see and see if you want to, kind of check it out. But it is sort of that model, and you can draft and you can construct and you can do that along those lines. So it gives you a little bit of overview here, and the price point is going to be $40 for retail. $220. That is such a huge jump. A wooden box and wooden tokens. And don't worry, 2 promos. So TCG style head-to-head asymmetric dueler. Then going over here to Vineyard, a winemaking game as a shared worker placement style game that has 8,200 of its $10,000 funding goal. So maybe it'll be funded by the time you guys are watching this. And what you're doing is you are slowly upgrading your characters, your people, that then you then assign them to one of the shared workers on the board, and you can manipulate that worker, and the abilities of that character that you assign to the worker will be slightly different as you're choosing to upgrade your characters different than your opponents, and then having the ability to take this 5 different phase system of making wine, including, just gathering it in the first place until finally loading it on the truck as you go along on a turn-by-turn basis. A few modules are going to give you some asymmetry, including hidden objectives, more depth of bonus locations available to you, and then a rotating action-based system of the locations that are going to be mixable. solo mode in addition. And, well, again, what else do you need to know? How to play. You can bling it out with some deluxifications. And, well, the advantages of watching what other people are doing and how you want to upgrade your card play and your path forward. So, rulebook, again, is there, and enough video content for you to feel like it's something that you can give a look-see from a little bit lighter style-esque, shorter worker placement, and from Pencil First Games. So Eduardo's going to be fulfilled here in a second, and give him a look-see, tell him the Liege sent you, and see if this lighter worker placement style is right for you. Biomes of Nilgiris, India's biodiversity. And so this is sort of a card explorative game where you're taking 3 actions on a turn-by-turn basis of the 7 possible actions as you're sort of building your tableau by conserving the animals, paying for the resources that they're required to set them into your tableau for endgame scoring, but then also having to travel and reveal new biomes as you go along to gain experience in order to gain those resources as well. Of the 3 actions that you have to take on a turn-by-turn basis, of the 7 available to you, one of them has to be to move to a different one. Your journaling, which is going to be gathering those resources from those biomes. You can then dump all of your research into your bag to store it because you're going to only have a limited amount. Then you use these to conserve and buy them if you are in the matching biome of the card you want to capture or grab in the first place. A little bit of extras if you're a backer here as an endemic treasure with 7 exclusive species. And I believe they also have an expansion down here if we scroll down far enough, so that you can see if you want a little extra to go along with that, with the mini expansions, extra missions that are going to be extra ways of scoring unique objectives, and then a special species expansion, which just gives you more and more species to mix in with the base game as a whole. So play now if you want to go play it on Board Game Arena. A few little stretch goals here, a little gameplay, and a little bit of UV unlocked box cover issues. And then this one actually is a little bit further out, though, than some of these others. This one is about a year out from fulfilling. And there you go. So again, a little bit of a tableau or resource worker placement style of things. And it's got the beautiful art animal aesthetic that we've seen a lot of in the last year and a half. So if that's your interest, there you go, Biomes of Nilgiris. Hopping over to Gamefound here, Paranormal, Gabe's solo game of the month. Rulebook is pending at the time of me filming this, but what you're doing is you have a 4x4 grid of locations here that are double-sided. The original side that you're starting with is sort of the bigger view, and then when you find the big bad who you're slowly gathering clues from, sort of Clue-esque style, then you get to flip all of them over and have more of a zoomed in view, because you're not only trying to find the big bad, you're trying to defeat the big bad, you're trying to rescue the hostage that they've taken care of, which is also somewhere else, and then you also have to get your super BFG weapon. You have 3 characters that you're playing as in a combination that will each have a certain total of dice that you're using for skill checks and actions along the way, that will also have equipment cards that are either passives, actives, or one-time use per rounds as you're going along and using those dice to do your actions, as well as battle other creatures along the way in order to avoid getting more than 15 doom before you achieve all of those 3 things that I mentioned. Otherwise, you lose. The gameplay, if we click down here, gives you a little bit of that sense. Gabe did 2 videos, so you can give a look-see if you want to see some hands-on. And again, $25 plus $5 shipping is going to get you a copy of it. 30 grand is already funded, so we'll see where it goes. Give them a look-see. Last up here, Cricket Champions, the board game. You don't even need to know anything about cricket, they say, but you can get this game as 57 other people are doing, and it's got $2,200 of its $2,000 funding goal, because you're essentially going head-to-head, one side as the bowler, one side as the batsman, having 6 different dice that are representing the 6 balls that you can utilize in order to match what you're rolling with the experience, the runs, or the prevention on a turn-by-turn, round-by-round basis. And so you match and go as you use the runs basically being your victory points at the end of, I think, 6 rounds. And then after you gather your experience, you can use that to then upgrade the cards that are going to be available to you, including championship cards when conditions are met that you can acquire as you're going along. Again, a couple of videos giving you some overviews here, a few slight stretch goals if we can hit a few other marks at 5 and 10K. And they're basically ready to print this thing so you can have it somehow in less than 2 months, which would be crazy or so. But, you know, if you want cricket and you want a thematic incorporation of a game that we haven't seen on the tabletop side of things, that is Cricket Champions. Give it a look-see. Tell them Leaf sent you. Okay, there we go. Actually, much faster the second time around. Probably not slightly as in depth, but also much less rambly, much less rambly. So take that for what you will. You got the better streamlined version this week, and again, covering stuff all across the board. I was just playing Ticket to Ride Legacy with my 11-year-old tonight. We're killing it. And he's gonna beat me, I have a feeling, by the end of this game. So whatever, like I say always, right? I love playing games. I am horrible at them. So my kids have Friday and Monday off for like a midwinter break style of things, even though they've already had like 5 snow days this year. Because yeah, I live in freaking Michigan, so why not, right? So that's going on. And then, well, we got nothing else this weekend. So playing some games, getting some reviews out. Gonna have a review out hopefully that in about a week and a half. Metal Gear Solid hopefully between now and then, and whatever else comes along the way. I am thinking about doing a new video series though as well called Fatal Flaws, meaning, you know what, I've looked at these games and I've said, you know what, like a 3 to 5 minute overview, sort of like 3-minute board games does, but saying this is my biggest issue, this could be your biggest issue with this game, let me give you a brief synopsis and an interaction of how that's going to appeal, just so that if you're trying to decide whether or not a video is right for you, I can let you know this big, you know, plus or minus depending on which side you are of things, and something useful in that aspect. So that's where my head's at, and that's what my thoughts are. I know like people are like, I want to be positive about everything, but you know what, I also hear the clamoring for like to be critical too, and this wouldn't be like negative, but just like, this is what you need to know. If this is still not an issue for you, still go get the game. So that's what's in my ticker right now, and I got plenty of stuff from already this month and last month that should have gone out, time-wise, review-wise, as well as just like, okay, like wish list and, you know, want list and retail don't buy, all that stuff. So I'm trying to get some of that out soon, and hit me up on Patreon and let me know what you want to see as well. Let me know what you are looking at for the rest of February as well. Have a great day. See you around.